This is Solve It for Kids.
Hello, my amazing and curious friends. My name is Jennifer, the Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, and this is Solve It for Kids, the science podcast that gives kids and families a peek inside the real world of scientists, engineers, and experts as they solve problems in their jobs using creativity, cooperation, and critical thinking. And now please welcome to the show my podcast partner, Galactic Space Geek, Jeff Gagne.
Hello, Jennifer, and hello, listeners. This week's Best Of is going to take us to places we never thought would be as interesting as they are.
That is so true. What episodes are we learning from today?
The best of STEAM activities.
Ooh, the best of STEAM activities. These are so much fun. So we are going to hear snips from episode 198, How Do You Turn Wind Turbine Blades into Functional Art with Brian Donahue.
Yes, that was so fun.
It was! Episode 195, How Can You Use Music to Get Kids Excited About STEM with Victor Villegas. Also an amazing episode, right? And episode 214, How Does a Landscape Architect Shape the World with Chris Flagg.
Such a cool guy.
Really, really fun episode. We hope you guys enjoy them, so take a listen.
How do old wind turbine blades become art?
How do old wind turbine blades become functional art? Ooh, we're going to talk about the art in STEM and STEAM. So who is our guest today, Jeff?
Today we have Brian Donahue with us, and he is managing partner of Canvas.
Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. And I mean, we're going to talk about the intersection of STEM and art, right?
Absolutely.
This is going to be so fun. So I have to ask, as a kid, were you always kind of creating art out of anything you could find?
I was creating art. I was creating different science projects, some that didn't go as well as others, some that I probably should have had a little more parental supervision for.
I love
that. My parents did not love it as much, but always a curiosity about taking different things and turning them into something else or seeing what could be made out of different things that you just had lying around.
Okay. So I have kind of heard a similar thing before. A lot of people like to, whether it's take things apart and see how they work. Do you have any idea where that inkling came from of wanting to take these things and create other things?
I don't. I think is a little genetic. My father, when he was young, his parents went on a 2-week trip to Europe. And when they came back, he had taken his mom's car apart.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Car apart.
Yes. He was a little more mechanically inclined than I. So he actually got it put back together in short order when they got home. But,
I bet.
I think when you look at things and have a view of the world where you have this insatiable why. And
Yes.
I'm a hypocrite when I tell my own children, okay, can you not ask why? Because that's how that's how we're wired at Canvas is you get to places by asking why, or more importantly, sometimes why not? Just because someone hasn't done something before, that doesn't mean it can't be done.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's me when I was growing up too. I was one of those kids that was always asking why. My mother her response to me was go look it up. Right? Because back then we had encyclopedias. Do you remember? Yes. And so we didn't have the web. So I was forever pulling the encyclopedias off the, bookshelf and reading through all them. And I think she like you, sometimes got tired of answering all my questions.
But I think that's a good answer, right? And it's funny, I can remember the bookshelf in our house with the World Book Encyclopedia.
That's what we had, yes.
Laid out on it. And I think that's a good answer. It's probably a parent's defense mechanism, but I can explain it to you, or you can look it up. And I think looking it up teaches you to find a way to find the answers out of just asking someone.
Right. Well, and sometimes it actually furthers your curiosity too, because then you learn more and then you're like, oh, and so maybe that's how you start the seed of curiosity as a kid, which hopefully you carry into adulthood, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So carrying your seed of curiosity into adulthood, connect a couple of dots for us.
Yeah.
Going from taking things, making new things, which is basically exactly what you're doing now.
It's been a journey, and it's interesting that you talk about connecting the dots. On a lot of our whiteboards around here, we have this phrase that we use, is that we connect the dots to solve problems and create opportunities. And we came up with it. I don't want to take credit for somebody else's quote, but we've really lived by it. And it got us to a place where we were in a business and working with renewable energy companies and working with them when they were taking apart turbines and replacing them with new ones. And there's a bunch of different components, and some are really easy to handle and recycle. And then these massive fiberglass blades, nobody knew what to do with. So for about the last 3 years, we've been working on this solution. And one of our founders just came down one day and said, if we do this and flip it on its side, we can make furniture. And public was out there. Yeah, it was wild. We never looked back after we heard that idea.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so to give our listeners a little kind of grounding here, tell us like exactly what you guys work with and how you got helping the renewable companies to kind of get, dismantle some of these turbines.
We're very terrible at saying no. So
me too.
Yeah, we see a challenge. And I think there's really two ways to look at the world. And I hope that your listeners will learn from this. There are things in the world that are unknown. And some people are very afraid of the unknown. They don't know what's behind that door. And then there are people like us at Canvas, and we've assembled a group that's pretty much wired this way. The unknown is the most exciting thing in the world. We want to rip that door open and see what's behind it. And that's really where it came from. We were working with these companies because wind turbines and renewable are really great. And they take wind and sun and you're powering your homes. You're powering the country. But they wear out and they age out, and there's different reasons they come down. So there's this huge turbine that is now on the ground, and what do you do with it? Well, it's easy to take the metal components and recycle those. Metal's been recycled for probably hundreds of years now. Melt it down, turn it into something else. And then the fluids, there's also a lot of companies out there doing great things of repurposing oil and hydraulic fluid to make it a product that can be used again. But everyone just looked at the fiberglass blades and said, oh my gosh, they're 150 feet long. They weigh 10 tons. What are we going to do with them? And initially, like most things, they said, well, we'll chop them up and bury them in a landfill. We don't love that, and nor did anyone out there. So the industry had to react quickly and find a better solution. So there are a couple other things out there that people are doing. They crush the blade and use it as fuel in a cement kiln, which is okay. It's better than landfill, but you still have emissions and other things to deal with. That's why we wanted to take the route that used the least amount of energy to convert that blade into our final product.
Wow. I like that.
Thank you.
Okay. So you just said they were 150 feet long.
Yeah.
How much did you say they weighed? I missed that.
About 10 tons.
Holy cow.
We've had blades now that are coming in that are 170 feet, 180 feet. They're getting bigger because the new turbines produce more power. It means a bigger blade. When you look at some of the offshore equipment they're putting out there, the blades are 300 feet long. I mean, they're a football field long. It's
holy cow.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. So continuing, again, connecting that dot.
Yeah.
How did your partner and how did you guys come up with a company to this that you were going to take these pieces that nobody could come up with a good solution for and find better solutions.
So once we had the initial idea about roughly 3 years ago,
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Parker Kowalski is our managing director of brand. He came up with it. Once we had that, we started to look at, okay, now how do we do this? And one of the biggest factors for us was to be able to do it at scale and not be any little science fair project, but be able to do it again and again and really make products. These blades, as I mentioned, are heavy, they're durable, they're not going anywhere for a long time.
Can I ask you, how do you move them? I mean, I'm just thinking 10 tons.
Yeah.
Wow. This is not you just pick it up and move it around.
No, I'm not
Hey,
quite
Ted,
there.
you got a pickup truck?
So one of the first things that happens to get the blade to us, it's a marvel of engineering actually that they make these in a factory and then ship them to the wind farm in one piece. If you ever see a truck going down the highway, it's incredible. But for us, we don't need the whole blade. Well, we do need the whole blade, but we don't need it in one piece. So when it comes down in the field, we cut it into thirds or fourths so we can use normal trailers and move it to us. So the pieces we get are 5,000, 6,000 pounds. They're about 40 to 50 feet long that we can move around with a crane or typical equipment that you would have on hand.
Okay, so that makes sense. Anyway, go ahead with what you're saying. I was just like mind-boggling trying to figure out how you're going to move these gigantic things.
And so once we cut them down further, we cut them into what we call fillets, and they're 18 to 36 inches, depending on. Yeah, if you look at it like a tenderloin, we like to eat around here. So we had that food analogy. Depending on what we're making, we use a saw in our factory that was actually designed to cut marble and granite in Italy. So big chunks they bring out, they cut into slabs.
Right.
So it's just a rope that goes around and cuts through our blade to give us our fillets. But each fillet on the light side is 200 pounds. And depending on the product, they go up to 600 pounds. So it's big, heavy furniture, which is why we aim it at public spaces. Not too many people have 600-pound benches in their backyard and call a couple buddies and move it around the deck to where you want it. So it's all about being out there in public spaces and displaying what we're doing.
How can you use music to get kids excited about STEM?
How can you use music to get kids excited about STEM? I think we might have a song or two in this one from our guest. Who is our guest today, Jeff?
Here's the deal. Our guest today is an incredible gentleman. His name is Victor Villegas. Listen up, everybody. During the day, he works at Oregon State University as their Broadband and Digital Technologies Adoption Coordinator. That sounds all serious and adult-like. But he is also known as the Drone Singer, or the Weird Al of drones.
Welcome to the show, Victor.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Happy to be here.
We are thrilled to have you. This is going to be such a fun episode, I think.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So we are going to talk all about music and how you can use it to make kids excited about STEM. So I have to ask you, as a kid, were you always into music?
Absolutely. My parents both loved music, and we had instruments laying around the house. They did this on purpose because they wanted us kids to learn music. So they, on purpose, had just different instruments laying around the house, and we naturally gravitated to that. And I learned guitar and piano and drums and pretty much anything I could get my hands on. My mom plays the piano and the organ. My dad plays guitar and mandolin. So yes, music was a big part growing up.
That's fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, you said you had instruments just laying around the house, and you just mentioned a couple. I'm wondering right away, did you have instruments laying around the house that your mom or dad did not play, but just for you to be able to start learning?
Kind of, sort of. I mean, there was instruments that they played somewhat, but maybe they didn't play it to a very high level. And then I took it to the next level.
And then I've got to ask, of all those instruments, which one did you sort of latch onto first?
Oh my word. That's a tough one. It's kind of, saying who's your favorite child and things like that.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
no, I'm a multi-instrumentalist, and the one I attach to the best is the one I have in my hands at the moment, right? So
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That's fabulous. So, can you tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in a house full of music? My mom played piano, she played guitar, she played organ for the church. So, it's a very unique upbringing, isn't it? I don't know, it's
Absolutely.
like joyful or something.
Yeah, I loved it. We would sing,
Yeah.
we would sing together, especially around Christmas times, holiday
Yep.
season.
We did that.
We're involved with church stuff too. My folks had records, 8-track tapes for those
yes.
who are old enough to remember what those things were.
I remember those.
So I'd listen to records of like Chet Atkins and playing music.
Ooh.
We went on TV with the Lawrence Welk show and the
yeah.
accordion. My mom also
yeah.
played accordion. So it was, I just can't remember a time that we did not have music at home. It was just natural.
That was so. All right, I have to ask you a question since you brought up kind of old shows. Did you ever watch Name That Tune?
Oh, absolutely.
So for those of you that are like, I have no idea what this show is, they would be like, can you name this tune in so many notes?
Right. And we're trying to see can you do it in like 3 notes or less, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we did that as a family too.
One of our favorite shows. I know.
That's so
okay.
great.
So starting out in a house full of music,
yeah.
Did you end up continuing straight on, or did you get away from music and then come back to it later on in life?
No, it's always been a part of my life. I mean, I was like writing songs since I was a kid. My parents encouraged it and also wrote songs. I started taking formal music lessons when I was in first grade. I took like 3 weeks of piano and then decided I hated practicing. My sister continued, and she's a great piano player, and she plays, by note. But I decided that was like too strict for me. I later came back to piano back in high school and just learned how to play it by ear. Pretty good, to the point where people think I've taken a lot of lessons. But I have taken a lot of music lessons outside of piano. So let's see. I was very fortunate to go to school. We're in an elementary where we're taught to play the recorder, the flute.
Yes.
Sure.
I did that too.
Love the recorder.
So that was one of my first instrument. Actually, I was in kindergarten. So when we lived in Mexico for a while.
Right.
And believe it or not, they taught us how to play marching Mexican band on a drum. So they have bugle and drum corps in Mexico.
Wow.
Okay.
And we played and learned some of the cadences that drum and bugle corps. We didn't have bugles for the kindergartners, but we had little drums.
Yeah.
And we played the same things that, the basic stuff. And we actually marched for the Independence Day celebration in Mexico, along with all the other bands. And we were kindergartners, right? But that started the rhythm. That started the rhythm, and once you have the rhythm, the other stuff starts falling in place.
Exactly.
And I took guitar from my dad, and then took some more formal lessons. In high school, my main instrument was a trumpet, so I played that in band.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. And I just keep on adding instruments. I collect instruments and learn how to play them. Well, if you were able to see, I got like a trumpet back here. I got a guitar here, another guitar, a ukulele, a bunch of electronic synthesizers. I got a marimba on the other side.
Wow.
I even learned how to play bagpipes at one point, although it's been a while since I played that.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I understand those are difficult to play too.
They can be challenging, but it's just like everything else. You do it enough and you work at it, you can learn it.
That's fabulous. Okay, so now we have the music. How did we get to the love of science, technology, engineering, art, and math? How did you kind of start that and then bring them all together?
I've been very fortunate to have parents that encourage me to follow my passions and my interests. And from very young, I'd love going to libraries and museums.
Me
and
too.
Okay.
Me too. Yes.
I loved learning. I just loved learning.
Me too.
And anything I could get my hands on. Reading. Once I learned how to read, oh my word, everything was open to me.
Yes.
And I would just go to the libraries. And my main interests at the time were airplanes, aviation.
Oh, yep.
I wanted to be a pilot. Loved art. I wanted to be an artist and a photographer. Okay. One of my grandfathers was a professional photographer.
Wow.
So I kind of want to follow that. And I wanted to later on work with technology. But the thing is, I didn't want to do one thing or the next. I wanted to do all at the same time, right? So I wanted to be a flying photographer who played guitar and taught and worked with technology. So,
oh, yeah. I have that problem. When I was in high school, I wanted to be an organ transplant surgeon astronaut. Well,
the thing is,
they still don't have that, but that's what I wanted to be. I've been able to
put all those things together, though. That's the amazing thing.
Right?
That's the best thing about these stories in these episodes with this podcast. I was just thinking, as both of you were talking about your wide varieties, I was like, okay, I could picture Victor going to his mom and dad saying, Mom, Dad, I definitely want to go to college, but I don't see one where I can be a flying guitar playing librarian as a major. So what do you want me to do?
Yeah, I made my own major, basically.
There you go.
Yeah, so I took 2 years of aviation right out of high school. Okay. Decided that I learned how to fly, but I did not make that a career. And then I switched to graphics technology because that's back in the 80s. Yep. The desktop computers were coming along. Apple, I got a Mac, SE, the one and all. Yeah. And taught myself that. And I worked in commercial printing and digital publishing for a long time.
Oh, wow.
But I still had the music, and I would play still for weddings and whatnot on the side. I owned my own media production company at one point. And so that was my photography and video thing.
Yeah.
That I wanted to do. And then I still flew airplanes except model airplanes, right? So that was my aviation side of things. So I never gave up on things. I was just putting them all, they were kind of separate somewhat. However, when I got this job at Oregon State University and doing tech support and training on technologies, I learned that we were using drones for research at the university. And I go, I got to find out about that. And so I looked into information about that. And this newfangled thing that was called drones, right? I knew how to fly RC airplanes. And we used to have these motors. We had the special gas, and it was very smelly and messy, and you had to fiddle it. Well, now with electric motors on the drones, it was so simple. You just put a battery, turn it on, and boom, you're flying. They basically fly themselves, so you didn't have to worry about crashing them too easily. They're still crashable, but it was so much easier than the traditional remote control, RC airplanes.
How does a landscape architect shape the world?
How does landscape architecture shape the world? Ooh, I already love this question. So who is our guest today, Jeff?
I agree with you, Jennifer. Let's get to it. Our guest today is Chris Flagg. He is a fellow within the industry of landscape architecture.
Welcome to the show, Chris.
Wow, not sure I can top that, Jeff, but thank you. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here. And I'm absolutely excited to chat with you both tonight. So thank you for this.
Oh, well, we are thrilled to have you. And and I mean, I'm so excited to learn more about what landscape architecture people do because, most of us think that it's just planting trees and everything, but we were talking to you beforehand and it's not at all like that.
The misconception of landscape architecture, I think, is because the word landscape is combined with architecture. But I like to think of it as site architecture. And really, what we do as landscape architects, we have the opportunity to design and to envision everything that's from the ground level up.
Wow.
Yes, plant material is a part of it, but so is architecture, so are streets, so is our utilities and infrastructure, spaces, everything related to community building and great places. We have the opportunity to develop and design, and it's an absolutely thrilling profession to be a part of.
That's awesome. So as a kid, did you were you designing spaces and looking out in your backyard and saying, Mom, Dad, move these things around?
Well, what's funny is I love the outdoors. I grew up in New Orleans, but I was always outside. Mom and Dad used to always have to hunt me down.
I was that kid too.
Yep, I ran the streets as a kid, but all good.
Yep.
And I loved the places and spaces and played all sports and that sort of thing. So yes, love the outdoors. But I think my biggest passion was my love of drawing and art and creativity.
Oh.
So as a young child, I was always doodling, drawing, and I wanted to see how I could really solve my creative juices, if you will, through not only art, but also being outdoors and dealing with outdoor spaces in a way that is creative. Wow, to be able to think, design, and create, and oh, by the way, draw. That pardon the pun, but that drew me to landscape architecture in a really good way.
That's fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah.
And well punned. So if you could connect a couple of dots for our younger listeners, a lot of them have these interesting things that are very appealing for them. How did you end up connecting the dots? A lot of kids like to draw and they carry around their notebook, and whether they're drawing landscapes or, manga characters, how did you end up connecting the dots that this might be a career?
It's interesting because in high school, I actually didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted it to be creative. Okay. Yes, I thought of pure architecture. To me, pure architecture was, and no offense, but I thought it was a little bit inward oriented. I love designing buildings and there's many great architects that I follow and I certainly appreciate all of what they do, but I wanted to be broader. I wanted it to be more expansive. I thought, how wonderful would it be to deal with outdoor spaces? I stumbled upon landscape architecture my first year in college. And I looked at architecture. I spent a semester in architecture, and I said, I'm not quite sure this is going to be what I want to do. I stumbled upon landscape architecture, and I looked at the curriculum, and I said, ooh, wow, 5-year undergrad. Okay. But it's got a lot of art. It's got a lot of art history. It's got fine arts. It's got design. It's got science. It's got technology. It's got engineering. It's got all of those factors that if I could, and again, being from South Louisiana, if I could put that recipe together in the gumbo that is really tasty, then I want to give it a shot. And all this happened when I was 17 years old.
Wow.
I have a lot of people ask me, what would you do over again if you had to make that decision again? Yeah. I'd make the same one. So at 17, I made one of the best decisions ever.
That's fantastic.
Well done.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So it was exhilarating to be a part of it.
So can you kind of explain to us a little more in depth, what do you do as a landscape architect?
Part of it is quite a diverse profession, Jennifer. So one of the things, certainly you can deal with pure landscape architecture. And that's, it could be residential planting design. It could be large scale planting design. It's with the focus on plant material. And again, obviously, that's the basis and really the foundation of landscape architecture is its ability to know plant material, their growing characteristics, their seasonal characteristics, shade types and tolerances. We had to learn thousands of plant material while in college and understand their use, know where to put them, how to use them, how to create the best exposure. It was sort of right plant for right place. So that's a component. So when I got into landscape architecture, I said, plant material is fine, but, I want to think bigger picture. I'd like to say, okay, how do I use plants and how do I shade maybe a building? How do I shade a street? How do I shade a park? How do I deal with connectivity between all of that? And I said, I love master planning. I love large scale designing. I love urban design, community planning. I gravitated into that level of professional pursuit because of the framework that landscape architecture offered me. And it's been exciting ever since because some of the projects I've had the opportunity to be involved with, from college campuses to cityscapes to international work, all of that is so influential to people to create memorable spaces. And I often ask people, I said, what do you remember when you were in college or in high school or as a kid growing up? What do you remember? Do you remember a building or do you remember a space that you were in?
Yes. Okay.
Space maybe you played or there was an activity there that really, really brought back some fond memories. So that's what landscape architecture is to me. And that's why I've loved it so long within this profession.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That makes a whole lot of sense, and that really helps me wrap my brain around that title, which is exactly what Solve It for Kids is all about.
Yes.
You just mentioned some of the jobs that you worked on, and you mentioned college campuses, and it's always been a weird fascination of mine, but I have a feeling you're going to get it. I love the idea of a campus. There's ground, there's usually a fence to separate the campus, but there's buildings and there's parking and there's pathways and there's usually the open spaces, maybe a pond, depending on what it is, a playground or that type of stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about a job or two that you did, maybe one that was a college campus? And I love the idea of a cityscape as well.
Wow, Jeff, I think from here on in, I anoint you as an honorary landscape architect for noticing all those wonderful components of a campus. Because, with college, what any campus is, whether it's high school, whether it's elementary school, whether it's university, it's an urban design process. It's urban design. It's housing,
urban design.
It's walkability, it's connectivity, all of that combined into a college campus that, yes, where is the boiling pot of knowledge and education? Where are the great experiments given? And that's on the university, at the university level, to where let's try mass transit, let's try walkable communities, let's try building adjacencies and relationships. All of that comprise a campus that is connected through shady walks, through pleasant spaces, community spaces, village greens, everything related to, say, a city, you have within the campus as well. And the demographic there is learning as well. So that environment continues to be a learning environment as we, produce great spaces and great buildings and just hopefully an inspiring environment.
Well, that's another thing that kind of leads us towards our question, because when I think of campuses, which I notice everything else that Jeff was talking about, but I think I react to them a little bit more on the emotional level, right? When they're set up well and the flow is great and they have lots of green spaces, you just feel calm and kind of peaceful when you're walking through them. And I've noticed that. I live in Jacksonville, Florida, as you do. And, lately I've noticed, like, if you go to some of these hospitals outside, there are these gorgeous kind of places where you want to just sit down under a tree or whatever. And it strikes me as, being in a hospital could be like a stressful time, but then you walk outside. So do you work on any of these things? And when you do it, do you think about like the mental image that you're putting in the people's heads?
All the time. Very, very well summarized too, Jennifer. You're exactly right. Contemplative spaces, healing gardens and healing spaces. It's very popular these days. Certainly the mental stress that all of us are under through the normal day. Isn't it nice to become one with nature? When they say you have a high stress level, what do? Take a walk. Take a walk in nature.
Right.
Enjoy the sounds and the sights.
Right.
Turn off your phone, leave it at home, and check out really the sounds and natural smells, the experiential opportunities that nature provides.
We told you at the beginning, these were episodes and topics that you didn't know you would be interested in until you start listening, and then you definitely want to learn more. To do that, you go listen to the full episodes.
Right, and you can find all of these amazing episodes on our website, solveitforkids.com. And don't forget that each episode has its own website page with more information and book recommendations if kids want to learn more from that as well. If you liked these episodes, or even if you have an idea for a new episode, perhaps, that we haven't done yet, some kind of topic you're interested in, make sure you tag us on our social media. We are at KidsSolve at Facebook, X, and Instagram.
Next week, Jen and Jeff will still be on our summer break, so you get to look forward to one more excellent best of episodes. Until then, you'll hear Jen and Jeff on
Solve It for Kids!